Hello, my name is Natalia Mora, and I am going to be doing my presentation on a College Explorer dashboard. So first off, just a little bit of context and motivation behind this project. Um, Something I know that everyone in this program and many young adults have experienced is how competitive college has become. And so over the last couple years, it has become harder and harder before the obvious shoe-ins like the valedictorian and those who had tons of extracurriculars and 4.0 GPAs. All of that has become now more of a baseline for getting into schools. And as it's becoming more competitive, we see that students are just mass applying to a bunch of schools, which is super expensive. Here we have a depiction of the average prices of different types of institutions just to apply. And we're finding that a lot of students, just out of pure desperation, are applying to a ton of schools. We have things like the Common App, and more, it's feeling like less of a choice where to go to school, and students are kind of just desperate to get in wherever because it's getting so competitive. So I wanted to make a tool that really goes back to the root of what students should be considering when they're preparing to apply for schools. Students should get out of the super competitive nature that's surrounding them and try to focus in on what is their true priority, and apply to schools with more intention based on what their priorities are and the schools that they would actually enjoy, rather than just looking for the big names or the super competitive schools that everyone's trying to get into. So the data that I am using for my project, first off, I am sourcing data from the U.S. Department of Education's College Scoreboard database. And this is a massive database that contains a bunch of different metadata and statistics on colleges all over the U.S., ranging from graduate level universities down to community colleges. And the database contains a ton of useful information on these schools, things like their location or their price or different academic metrics or demographic and stuff like that. And so I used this database to fetch data for the dashboard portion of my web app. And then the other thing I wanted to do is allow students to filter and explore university suggestions based on their given preferences, and then even take it a step further. And after they look at things that might be numeric preferences or just meta-based preferences, then I wanted them to be able to take a deeper look and look at student reviews, so firsthand accounts of pros and cons that come with universities that they might be interested in. And for that, I sourced data from the common website called Rate My Professor, and many people know this website as, appropriately so, a website for giving evaluations for professors, but there also is, for every university that's on the website, there is a university page that contains ratings for just universities as a whole. And this is obviously a ton of rich data that can give a lot of insight into how the students feel about universities as a whole. And so I built a web scraper that fetches these evaluations. And this in the picture is a bad example because this student didn't include a very long text portion of the review. They just put awesome. But a lot of these have really large text reviews that can then be processed using NLP techniques. And there's a lot of really valuable data there. So that is where I source my data from. And then let's take a look at the overall data pipeline before we jump into the actual web app itself. So this is a general overview of the system's architecture. We have 3 data sources, including the user input, the Rate My Professor reviews, and the College Scoreboard database university filter data. And then there's some transformation that happens, both with just plain Python data manipulation as well as a neural network text classification, LSTM model, and ultimately OpenAI's GPT 3.5 turbo summarization is leveraged to summarize the output. And then For storage, I used cloud storage through GCP. I set up a data warehouse in Google BigQuery. And then, of course, there's the interface, which is the web app that's hosted on Streamlit. So I was able to code it in Python, and I will show you that pretty soon here. So I'm going to walk you through the process or the full data pipeline. And this is a fairly low fidelity little diagram here, but I think the visual will help as I explain. So as you will soon see, there is a user that accesses a web app, the College Explorer web app, and through a dashboard on the web app, they're able to input the user preferences. So they might select their preference of location or the institution type, or maybe a tuition amount, or even average SAT scores of accepted students. Once that user input goes into the web app is able to use these preference metrics to query university or college recommendations from the College Scoreboard database or scorecard database. And the U.S. Department of Education has a really nice API set up. So we're able to take that user input and create an endpoint and easily query some schools. And what's returned is a list of schools that fit the user's preferences. From there, once again, we get user input. The user is able to select schools from that given list that they might want to hear more about or explore deeper. And those selected universities are then used. And here there's kind of a split pathway. One of two things can occur. So first, the web app sends each of these college names to the warehouse and tries to fetch what's ultimately going to be the output, which is summaries of student reviews for the user. Now, in case number one, where the school has already been generated summaries for, and they're able to pull that directly from the data warehouse from the summaries table, and they send that right back to the user. In case number two, if that school hasn't been, the data for that school hasn't been fetched and processed yet, and therefore it doesn't exist in the warehouse, instead, the application will will use that college name to fetch data from Rate My Professor. And what this does is it scrapes all of the student reviews for that school from the website. From there, all of those text reviews are processed using a text classification sentiment analysis model that has been trained on a bunch of data that was taken from the Rate My Professor website. And it classifies each review as either positive or negative sentiment. And from there, that it saves those reviews, so all of the fetched reviews, to a reviews table in the warehouse along with their assigned sentiment classification, so either positive or negative. Additionally, those positive and negative groupings are processed with GPT, which is accessed through OpenAI's API. And the model that I used is the GPT 3.5 Turbo model. And the reviews are sent there, and the GPT model summarizes all of the positive reviews and pulls out the main positive aspects that students are sharing about the university, and then does the same thing also with the negatives. So it creates two different summaries, and these summaries are then saved to a summaries table in the BigQuery warehouse. And from there, after all that's done, the web app then tries again to fetch the summaries for that school, and this time they are in the warehouse, so they're able to be pulled and delivered to the user on the nice web app interface. So in that way, fetching some of the summaries for the user happens quicker if it's already inside the warehouse, and then some take a little bit longer because it has to go through this entire pipeline before being fetched. However, with each use, the warehouse data grows and the app ultimately becomes quicker in more use cases. And so this is a little diagram kind of depicting what I just explained. The data isn't specifically modeled in a 3NF architecture or anything like that, but as you can see, there are connections between the reviews table and the other two tables through some foreign keys. So, alrighty, so now let's jump into the web app itself. Okay, so here is the actual web app itself. It's called the College Explorer dashboard. So when users first get here, they are instructed to select their personal preferences. And this is all kinds of different categories surrounding different aspects of colleges. So we have location stuff, institution characteristics, even mission-based, if they cater to specifically one gender or tend to have a particular mission for different ethnic groups. So we can select, let's do Colorado, of course, and Alabama, and we'll do city or suburb. And let's do tuition cost. We'll do public universities with 35K or less. So once we've selected everything we want, then we can come over here and this is the number of results or suggested schools that will be put back. I'll put 40, and obviously this is a maximum. So if there are less than 40 schools that fit the different preferences, then it will just show as many as there are. And then we can do descending or ascending for how the resulting schools are sorted. And this is alphabetical, so we'll do A to Z. And then finally we're done, so we click Get Colleges. And as you can see, all of our preferences were used to build a query that fetched the schools that fit the bill from our college scoreboard database. And so we have all of our suggested schools here, or at least 40 of them. And for this next part, I want to make sure I show you two different examples. So one example where the school already exists within our data warehouse, and then the other one where it doesn't, so everything needs to be generated on the spot. So let's head over here to the data warehouse. And as you can see, we have our three tables that we talked about. So if we come over here to our summaries table, we have our a couple summaries for schools that have already been requested. So this is from different times I was playing around and messing with the dashboard, and it's been saving the positive and negative summaries here. And so I want to make sure I get one from here. So maybe we can do University of Alabama and Huntsville, and then I'll get an example that is not yet in this warehouse yet. Let's see, it doesn't look like, I think this is CSU. Yeah, so maybe we can get Boulder as a good example. So let's find our Huntsville one here. You can type it in. University of Alabama and Huntsville. So that's one that's already in our warehouse. And then let's find Boulder as well. I was saving Boulder for this demo. There's our University of Colorado Boulder. Oh, it's right next to it. Boom, so now we've selected our two. You can select more, but just for time's sake, I'll select those and we're gonna lock in our selections. And as you can see now, we can no longer select others. However, if you want to edit your selection, you can just do this clear selected and then redo it. And now we are ready to get our student review summaries. Okay, so this one is starting with Boulder because that one came first. And as you can see, it's gonna take a while here because it's scraping the Rate My Professor website after it's checked in the warehouse and seeing that there isn't any instance or summaries for this school. So it's collecting all the reviews, processing them with the sentiment analysis model, which splits them into two groups, and then leveraging GPT to create these summaries. And as you can see, it created, and then almost immediately after, you could see the Huntsville, Alabama one happened really quick because it was able to just fetch it directly from the data warehouse. And it's complete. And here we have our positive aspects and our negative aspects of each school. And then now if we go over to our warehouse and We refresh. Now we can see that Boulder is now been saved here with a new ID. And if we come over here to our reviews table, we can see that there is a lot more data in here because this is saving all the individual reviews and attaching them via this summary ID to which summary it goes to in the summaries table. And if we wrote a little query, we'd be able to see that we now have the Boulder data in there, as well as any other school that we have in the summaries table. Okay, so that is the College Explorer web app, and the hope here is just that students are able to put aside the external pressures and competition of the higher education world and instead zero in on what really matters to them and apply to schools accordingly. So I thought this was kind of a cool project to close off my long career in college and then graduate school. So thanks for tuning in.